Hello everybody, and welcome to the next in a series of Instagram Lives. My guest today is an incredible guitarist, a Grammy-Award winning musician, one of my favourite players, and I can honestly say he's been a great influence to me as a player. Hello to everyone in Singapore. Yes, absolutely. So glad you could join us. Yes, you will have seen this gentleman's playing, doubtless in his own records, but also in the extraordinary work that he's done for Dream Guitars in North Carolina. Now, those of you who know my background will know that I've also done a bit of YouTube demonstration, but Al Petteway is the absolute king of the acoustic guitar YouTube world, and he's right here. So he sent a request to be in my live video. It would be churlish to refuse, wouldn't it? Let's see what happens. Oh, this is exciting.
Hey there.
There he is! Hello,
Yeah,
Al.
I was a little. This is the first time I've ever tried this, so I was having a hard time finding where to go to sign on. But I found you, I think.
You did. How great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing as well as we can be. I mean, in North Carolina, it's getting worse and worse as far as the coronavirus. So we're just staying home as much as we can, you know.
Good.
So,
Good. I'm very pleased to hear that. And you're keeping creative?
pretty much, yeah. I'm having fun exploring different things. Like I'm doing more lap slide, acoustic lap slide, which is
Oh,
kind
really?
of fun. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's
What?
cool. Yeah.
Well,
And,
thank
and
you.
and of course writing, regular acoustic six string. But I have all my
I should
electric
hope so.
stuff set up, but I haven't actually cranked it up yet in a while. It's been a while, mostly because my wife's been home. Amy's been home
Right.
most of the time, and I usually do that when she's gone.
Understandable. Understandable. Listen, Al, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
I've got to say that I absolutely love your playing, and as I mentioned in the introduction, having spent pretty much a decade at the chalk face of acoustic guitar YouTube demonstration, you had set a gold standard from very early on. So
Well,
it's
I was lucky to get involved with that, through Dream Guitars, of course. That was my first time really getting introduced to all those different luthiers.
right.
Before that, I was pretty much, I had been playing custom-made guitars for a long time, but it wasn't, I didn't know that world at all. Just my friend Larry Seifel, who had a company called Pearlworks, had introduced me to a lot of these people. But it was really Paul Huemler at Dream Guitars that took me around and introduced me to all the players in the field, so to speak.
Of course, yeah. And how did that relationship start?
Well, we had a mutual friend in Martin Simpson.
Of course. Yep.
And so when Paul was moving from New Jersey down to Asheville, North Carolina, Martin told him he should look me up. And so so when he got down here, we had lunch, and I think he wanted me to go in with him on the business, but I don't think he realized how much money poor musicians make. But he set it up in his home, and it started off as a small operation, just one room on the side of his garage, where he was just doing all the selling, and I was taking the photos and doing the demos, and
Wow.
He expanded from that to having his wife involved and his brother involved, and then beyond that, now he's got a whole staff plus a repair shop, and so
Yes, indeed.
yeah.
So take me back to the early days, because when I started my career as a high-end dealer, a dealer of high-end guitars, let's say luthier built guitars, because high-end is such a subjective term.
That's right. Yeah.
When I just started getting into it, it was audio only. And I remember that Dream Guitars had already assembled a frankly intimidating archive of beautifully recorded audio clips. When did you decide, and how did you decide to start branching out into video?
Well, that actually happened after I quit doing most of that work. But
Right.
when I was there, what would happen is a guitar would come in, and it would come to me, and I would change, I would change the strings, clean it up, do all that stuff.
Right.
Then I would do an audio recording, then I would hang it up. I had a closet I was working in. I hung it up and took photos, and then once the photos were done in the audio, then Paul would put together all that onto the computer. And as it went along, it made more sense to start having the photos done in their own location, and sort of separating out the different jobs. And so I eventually just started doing coming in and doing the recordings for the video, but he had another person doing the video. So,
Right.
So I would just come in. He would. This is the way it was ever since then. Was I would come in, and they would have a bunch of guitars, maybe 10 or 12 guitars, and ready to go. And then I would go in there and just knock them out. The sad part is I only got a chance to spend maybe 10 minutes with each one. Because I would have to tune it up, play it, then do the demo, and then go to the next one. To make it,
of course,
make it time efficient. But in between that time, there was a point where Paul was hauling all these guitars to my house, and he'd throw them all in his truck, and he would bring like 10 or 12 guitars over to my house and leave them.
Wow.
And then he would pick them up the next week and take them back, and then I would have all the audio and all the pictures and things like that. But it just he eventually got organized to the point where he had someone do the videos, someone do all the stringing up and the photos and all that stuff separately. And it made a little more sense because I can't remember how we originally did it, but I was working there almost full time at first, and then it eventually became just a once a week sort of job where I'd go in and just record a few guitars, whatever he had ready. And now I rarely go over there. When I do, it's usually for what you would say in high-end guitar world, the high-end guitars.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The ones over 20 grand.
I didn't want to say it, but I'm glad you did.
But it is true. When you said that earlier, it made me think the high-end name is really relative, because you go on, I'm on a number of Facebook groups, for guitar players and builders, and some people, any guitar over $1,000 is high end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I totally understand that. I mean, especially when you can buy one that plays perfectly well for under $1,000.
That's the difficulty now, isn't it? Because so much of the production instrument world has focused on incredible playability, matchless fit and finish. So you're looking at an instrument that costs less than $1,000 that is built to tolerances of 1/1000th of an inch on CNC, obviously,
right, sure.
And it's pretty much dipped in finish and then sent off on its merry way.
Right.
But I think that's the true mark of a really sensational handmade luthier, is to match that by hand.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. I think when a lot of times people will say, well, how much does that guitar cost? And I'll say, I'll give them a rough estimate, and they'll go, I would never pay that much. And I'm going, well, look at it this way. Think of how much that person's making per hour. If you count in all the hours it takes to build the guitar and finish it, but also all the hours it took to learn that skill, they're getting less than minimum wage, So you really can't ever say that those guys are making a lot of money. They have to sell them for a certain amount just to make it possible.
Yeah.
And it just takes so long to build one. I'm always amazed. I was involved, like I said, pretty early with Larry Seifel, watching him do inlay by hand, and little coping saw, and a bench, cutting it out, and just watching that process. And then he eventually figured out how to do CNC for. Sounds like my dogs are having a good time upstairs.
It's all part of the life experience. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. He figured out how to do inlay using CNC machines, and I think that's where he made the jump into sort of being the lead guy, because no one had done that yet. Bob Taylor, I think, was looking into it, and Larry had figured out how to do it, and also how to do it on XYZ axis.
Yes.
Which, so you could do like a curved surface, which is it was amazing watching his brain work, because none of that stuff existed before he started putting it to that use. And then him and his partner, the King of Pearl.
Oh yes, I've seen him.
Yeah, he still is part of I think his company's still called Pearlworks. I don't know. It may be slightly different, but Chuck Erickson is his actual real name. But the Duke of Pearl, that's right.
The Duke of Pearl. I always thought he should be the Earl of Pearl.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Dukes are fine too.
But the Duke that's a play on an American soul song, Duke
of
is
Earl.
it? Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, Duke of Earl. But anyway, so the Duke of Pearl, Chuck, he and Larry came up with this cool idea that, for a long time you had to take the shell and cut it up into as many flat pieces as you could get to inlay it, which wasn't very many. You'd get a good sized shell and end up with little 2-inch squares maybe at the most, out of that shell. And so much of it was just thrown out, just waste. And so what they did is they came up with a way to remove the lining of the shell and then flatten it out and make layers. So it's kind of like plywood. They called it
abalone. Yes.
Abalone.
That's famous.
That changed the whole inlay industry right there. That just changed
Absolutely.
Everything. So after that, Larry went from being one of those guys that was making, maybe $1 an hour to actually being pretty well off, but he was working, 30, 40 hours a day sometimes, so.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, lutherie, from my second-hand experience of it, it's a vocation. No one goes into modern guitar lutherie in order to make bank.
No, you do it. Yeah, that's right. I think that's true.
It just can't work that way. I've had some amazing questions in, and I'd like to share them with you. The first one, I guess we'll both be able to discuss. This goes back to the idea of guitars, specifically acoustic guitars on YouTube. We've both tried our very best to produce recordings that sound as natural and accurate as possible for the audiences on YouTube. And we've also, I know I have, I don't doubt you have too, come across this mindset of, yeah, well, you can make anything sound good. So it's like, okay.
Well, but the trick there is we, at least, when I was doing the majority of it, Paul does a lot of his own now, but the trick is that we would always string all the guitars with the same strings.
Exactly.
Change them, brand new strings, change them, and then do the recordings pretty soon after that. And in my case, I came up with a couple of tunes that I would do over and over, the same tune. And by limiting it to just me doing the samples, you could then compare me playing that particular tune on that guitar and then on this guitar. And you could actually compare them pretty well, because the only variable at that point is the guitar. If I'm playing basically the same tune or something in the same key, something really close, and you have the player being the same. Obviously, I'm going to play better some days than others, but my technique will be pretty much, consistent. The guitar strings are consistent, and the place we're recording it is consistent. Same mics. So we don't do any EQ. Nothing's. It's just set up some nice mics, put a player in front of them, record the guitar, and then if you do enough of those, and the way Paul set it up, I don't know if he still has this, but he had a listening room, he called it. You could go and pull up several guitars and listen to them side by side. And I think that was an awesome idea, because you could just pop from one to the other and say, well, this is this guitar, this is this guitar, and like I said, the only variable would be the guitar. And I think that's really important,
Absolutely, especially if a client is looking at maybe the same thing just in different woods, like a Froggy Bottom K or something.
Yeah, and I mean, even if the player was, you know, I think you could say, you know, like you said, you know, you can say, well, you can make anything sound good. Obviously, a good player is going to make it sound better, or they're going to get more response out of it because they have that whatever, that practice all those years of playing the guitar. But if you were to take a beginning player and do the exact same thing, you would have the same comparison.
Absolutely.
You know, you wouldn't have to worry about it, that variable. It would be the same person doing it. So it wouldn't matter how good they were, you know.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm completely with you on that. I'd like to learn a little bit more about your personal preferences. Now, I know that you've had signature models with a couple of different companies and luthiers. I'm well aware of a beautiful guitar that you designed together with Bill Tippin,
Yeah,
which was gorgeous.
it is. That's still, of my personal guitars, that's still my favorite, you know.
Right.
But as far as the ones that, I don't know, it's just all the stops were pulled out on that guitar. I mean, it was just, you know, it was an amazing guitar. It still is. I mean, my wife has stolen it from me though.
Oh
Amy
no.
plays it. You know, she plays it now, and I have to play all these other lousy guitars by people like John Slowbod. And, you
Oh.
know,
Oh.
I'm one of these people that has gotten so spoiled because of my association with Paul.
Mhm.
Not only spoiled but jaded too. Like you know, I go into, you know this, when you go in and you have like all these high-end guitars, then you start going, you know, people don't understand how they're not all the best guitar, and they really are compared to all these ones that we were talking about earlier. They really are up in that realm, and it comes down to personal taste at that point.
Exactly.
You're not really saying this one's better than that one, but you do get jaded to the point where even within the same builder, you'll play a dozen of their guitars, and this
Yeah.
one will really stand out. And that's happened to me where I go, that happened to me with Bill. That's how I ended up with that guitar. It was I played one like the one that I have now, and I called him up. I said, "This is the best guitar I've ever played." But I'd played hundreds of Bill Tippin's guitars
Mm.
before that. This one just really stood out to me. And it turned out he was trying a few experimental things with the bracing and all this, you know. So
Right.
it turned out it was something special. So we talked about what would I want, you know, in a guitar. And he basically made all these little things for me that I can't believe, really. I was so happy about that.
It
And
is a
you
gorgeous
know,
instrument.
it really is, yeah. And
Is it is
go
it a
ahead.
crescendo model?
It is a crescendo model. So he
Right.
had already had that model.
Mm.
So this is just, you know, some of the really rare Brazilian rosewood that he'd kind of kept back, you know, and then
Right.
also moon spruce top that was
Mm.
absolutely perfect, you know, just really, and all these little, I think the way he does his inlay, if you look at it, there's a lot of inlay on that guitar, but you don't notice it
Mm.
until you start looking. He uses a lot of tiny lines that are very subtle, and I like that. I think it's really I like, I'm one of these people that really enjoys inlay work, but I don't like it to look real garish. I like it to look, you know,
Yeah.
I like it to blend in with the guitar and make it look nice, you know, but I don't want it to be the only thing you see.
Well,
Because
it's an art form, isn't it? You know, I mean, there's
yeah,
certain inlay artists out there, Jimmy Wingert's, Mark Kett,
oh yeah,
you
oh yeah,
know, and I could just look at their work all day long,
yeah. And now
very happily.
Kathy, Jimmy's, you know, mom is. I'm a photographer too, and Kathy is becoming like this
Yes.
world-class photographer, you know. So
Oh
it's
man,
amazing
some of the
what she's
stuff
doing.
she's been doing
Yeah,
is oh
she blows
breathtaking.
me away. So you know, she's got talents that, you know, I'm probably everything else she does is amazing too.
Probably.
You know, she's one of those artists that you know she could pick up probably a paintbrush or do whatever, and she would be just as good at it. You know,
Oh, I
Just-
couldn't agree more. Um, Jaded. Let's go back to that. So yeah, it can happen, and it's certainly happened to me. It more sort of fatigue than
yeah.
than an actual, you know, snobbery. Let's hopefully
But
dispel
yeah, yeah, there's
that.
probably a
But
little bit of snobbery in there because when you
uh,
said that, I was go ahead. I'll
no,
let
it's
you.
just a
Go ahead.
little bit in there. I just wanted to know, is there anything that you've played recently from a name that people might not be familiar with that's really sort of blown you away?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. I've been pretty impressed with two younger builders. Um, Now, if I could just remember their names, Isaac
Isaac
Jang.
Jang, yes.
His guitars. I met him probably the same time I met you. Like 5 years ago at Memphis, and he had just it was the first time that I remember him ever
I think it was his
just
first
playing his.
show.
Yeah, and I went over there and played his guitars, and I was blown away. And he had studied under Kathy, I think.
That's right.
And then I don't know why his name went out of my head. Well, I know, Jordan McConnell is one of my favorites. I knew him before I knew him as a guitar builder. I knew him as a guitar player.
Right.
And we had worked together on a music camp and stuff like that. But he's as good of a player as he is a builder, which is pretty amazing. I think that's why his guitars are so amazing. And the other, I want to say he's Brazilian, but he's not Brazilian. He's why can't I think of his name?
Could he be Argentinian?
Yes.
Could it be Leonardo Buendia?
It is, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
He's another one that I think I met at that same show.
Yeah.
I was blown away with his guitars. And then since then, I've actually had the chance to play a lot more of his guitars. And every one of them is amazing. And all these guys, you play their very first guitars, and you go, I don't know how you could get better than this. And then they keep getting better.
Yeah.
And you say to yourself, this is ridiculous. It's just like players. It's the same thing. All the young players, they're coming along and blowing me away, because they're like, it's like you have these different worlds. I'm in my upper 60s now, so I'm ready to pass the torch on for sure. But I'm blown away at how good all these young players are, And same thing with the builders, you have the old school, which sort of was where they learned, and then now they're building these guitars that are taking all of that into consideration and making their own, And I think that's amazing. John Slobod's another one that his guitars are more in that Martin style, but I'm a big fan of that style. So every one of his guitars I've played, I just couldn't, I have several of them, so I almost can't resist buying them, But, and the thing is, we don't even have an endorsement deal, so I don't get any real great deal from John. I just get,
Just get guitars.
I just have to buy guitars, and he keeps posting them on Facebook and stuff, and like he'll post a new one up, like a 1930 style OM Martin, with the old banjo style tuners and stuff, and I'll be looking at it going, oh my God.
He's a very naughty man. He really is.
And Kim Walker's another one in that same realm, doing sort of the Martin style that I think is really wonderful. So yeah, those are Jeff Traugott, he's another one up there that I think all these guys are comparable. If you put all their guitars in the same room, I would say that you couldn't go and look at each one of them and say that this one is better than that one. And even when you play it, it would come down again to, like I said, what you want to hear. What are you looking to hear from that guitar? All these builders are just that's. It really drives me crazy, actually, and I'm glad I don't have more money because I think I've counted my guitars. I have maybe 20 or 25 guitars now, and they're all.
That's no number at all. You got room for more.
Well, the hard part is that luckily I have a huge closet full of cases. I keep my guitars out most of the time. Most people, are really curious about, how do you keep them, the temperature and humidity. I just hang them on the wall.
That'll do it.
And the thing is that, I do have a whole house humidifier, so that helps.
Okay. Yeah.
And where I live is not really dry or really wet. It's sort of maybe gets really humid for a month, and then the rest of the year it's not too bad. It never gets real cold, so
Oh, you're all right then. Al, you said something just now that sort of sparked off another train of thought. you're absolutely right. When you get to this sort of upper echelon, everything's different, but
Hmm.
nothing is necessarily better. Um, and it's up to the player to find what they're looking to hear.
Hmm.
Uh, I'd like to know what it is that you're looking to hear out of a guitar and experience.
Yeah, that's a um, yeah. Speaking of luthiers, that I got the same question from Michael Bastion that when I
Oh, did you?
yeah, and what yeah, he's another one of my favorite
Oh,
luthiers.
well, yeah, mine too.
Yeah, he just and we I saw his last time I saw you was when you were interviewing him.
Right.
Um, but anyway, uh, he had that same question, and as a player, I mean, I'm sure it's different as a builder than it is,
Mm,
or someone selling them too. I mean, but as a player, I look for there's a certain number of things I look for in a guitar for me, and it's not necessarily the same for everyone else. But
exactly.
as far as the sound, first off, I want to hear clarity. Since I'm a fingerstyle player, I want to hear a balance and a clarity across the strings. You know, when I'm playing a chord and I go across with my fingers or my thumb, I don't want to be able to really say, oh, that's the third string or that's the second string. I want them to sound like a classical guitar in the sense that every
Yes.
string, a really good classical guitar, no matter where you play that note, it's going to sound kind of similar.
Mm,
I think that I use a lot of open strings when I play, and a lot of fingered strings, and I don't want them to sound like fingered strings, open strings. I want them to sound like the
right.
same thing. So balance and clarity. I do a lot of seconds when I play. Really close intervals that
Mm,
are would be really dissonant played together, but when you do an arpeggio or something, they're not dissonant. They just sound really nice. And
exactly.
if the guitar doesn't have that clarity, then that just becomes muddy.
Mm,
Especially in the low frequencies, you just get this
yeah.
really this mud. And to me, it's if it's a guitar like that and I have to play it, I'll stay away from those frequencies. Whereas I
Mm,
don't want to do that. I want to be able to go
exactly.
down there. Um, so the clarity and all that, and I think the balance between treble and bass is something that changed with me as I became more of a fingerstyle player and less of a flat picker. I used to
Hmm.
play a lot of bluegrass and
Yes, you did.
swing and that kind of stuff. And back then, I played more of a dreadnought style guitar,
Mm,
um, made by Larry Seifel, actually.
right.
Yep. And so that guitar I still have, and it's balanced, but it's also got a lot of bass.
Mm,
But when I'm strumming or doing flat picking stuff, it doesn't bother me the same as if I'm doing fingerstyle. So when I use that guitar for fingerstyle, I use it for my low C tunings, because
right.
or down, I even go down to B on a couple of things. But that guitar tuned low responds better than any of my other guitars because it's got that big body.
Mm,
And it's a little deeper, I think, than the standard dreadnought too. So it's definitely bass oriented. Whereas on fingerstyle, I tend to like smaller bodied guitars because the balance between treble and bass, there's a sweetness in the trebles that I really like on a smaller guitar,
hmm.
um, that I don't get on a bigger guitar. You don't get the
Absolutely.
bass, but you get the sweetness in the trebles.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of like you just have to buy one of each, really. but they
Yeah.
but but there are a lot of people, they'll play a guitar that's really, it's really voiced for that kind of balance, and they'll first thing they'll say is it doesn't have enough bass. And in my
Mm,
ear, I listen to it and I go, well, if you have too much more bass, then that's going to throw off the balance to me.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
I think maybe that's a less experienced player that goes through that. I don't know, but I know that as a person that used to sell guitars too, that a lot of times that's the first thing they look for is bass. And
Mm.
I'm not sure why, especially with pickups, because once you plug it in, you can put as much bass as you want in there.
Well, exactly. I have a pet theory, and this kind of comes from spending time talking with Irvin Tamaki.
Oh, yeah.
Um, he says that a steel string guitar naturally leans towards the treble end. So the
Hmm.
challenge is bringing out the bass. Whereas with a classical guitar, it naturally leans towards sort of tubby and round sound, and the challenge is bringing out, impact and a sharp attack. And I think that, as you progress through the layers of not only quality but also orders of magnitude when it comes to expenditure, you start to find that a luthier-built instrument will have even more bass than possibly you're going to need. I mean, one example would be Leo Buendia that we mentioned earlier on. You play one of his modified dreadnoughts, and it has the sort of bass that encourages whale populations to rise in the area that you're playing.
But it's controlled.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. There's a difference.
Yeah, and you don't need all of it. That's just it. The power is there consistently all along the fretboard. And you're absolutely right. The quality of open notes and fretted notes, that doesn't necessarily mean a 0 fret, right. Because that actually makes me feel quite ill to look at.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, now Buendia is a good example. He recommends. I mean, he puts most luthiers put light gauge strings on their guitars, but he always puts a 13 on the first string.
Right.
And he recommends that, and I do too. I put a 13 and then a 17. I used to use all mediums, but now I'm using pretty much lights, but with the plain strings up a gauge, And he suggests that on his guitars, and I think that's to make up for that what you're talking about, because he's got. I think his guitars sound really beautiful, but when you put a 12 on the first string, it's a little too thin sounding. And because his guitar is voiced a little bit more that way. So when you put a 13 on there, then you get the punch. The 16 the 12 is missing. And I feel that way about almost every guitar.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always like to up those strings a little.
It's a common approach. I've tried it myself, but it threw out the balance for my left hand. And especially because I tend to use quite a lot of, certainly on the second string, quite a lot of vibrato and bends. And suddenly that was just, I wasn't quite making it, and it was a little sour. And
I play in dadgad tuning a lot too. So
exactly.
That makes it a lot easier. You need that extra size.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to scale length and neck length, are you on a 14 fret or a 12? What are you using these days?
Well, I like to use the 12 fret, but with the long scale. So, or standard long scale, 25/4, whatever that is.
Right.
And actually, one of my favorite guitars I have right now is a 1926 0018 Martin.
That makes sense.
And it's a 12 fret, but it's long scale. I didn't even know they made them long scale back then. And it's braced for steel string in 1926.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it was. I think they started with the 18 models, and that guitar feels stiffer in some ways than some of my newer guitars just because of that scale length. But I love it, especially if you play like I do in a lot of lower tunings. That scale length is really important. The tipping guitar is actually, I think, even longer. I think it's a 25/7 maybe.
Really?
25.7, yeah. And I wish I had it right in my hand. He did this really cool thing on the bass string for me. It's sort of like the I guess the poor man's fan fret or something, but it's but the sixth string has an extra piece of bone on it, so that it makes the sixth string longer.
Right. Yeah, I think I saw that. That's very cool.
And it's just enough so that when you tune it like I do, almost always to D or below, then it keeps it in tune all the way up the neck. It's a really nice little touch, and all he did was basically glue another piece of bone onto it, and then so he could move that slot back further, And I thought that was a really cool idea. I don't know if he does that on all of them, but he did that on mine, knowing that I do play in those tunings, And my wife, Amy White, she plays in a lot of low C tunings and things like that. So that's why I think she loves that guitar too.
Well, who can blame her? I've got a sort of a word association game here for you, Al. One of them actually has joined the conversation. Mike Bastion is here live with us. he
Michael.
may he might have thought that this would stop us from talking about him, but if anything,
Oh
it's
boy.
it's only made it worse. So, um, Bashkin guitars. What comes to mind when you think of Mike's work?
Oh man, I I think he had you word association. You want like one word?
No, no, no. I'll give you
Okay,
one word. You give me a stream of consciousness.
okay.
Take as long as
No,
you
I
need.
love what I love about what we were talking about earlier, the balance thing.
Mm,
The guitars that I've played of his recently are just so incredibly balanced, and also I think there's an elegance in his trim. I don't know how to explain that any other way. He's the first guy I remember using burning to create different kinds of
right.
colors in his woods that he's inlaid on the peg head and stuff. And I just thought that was beautiful when I saw that. But also he's just got this sense of this artistic sense that I don't think um, I mean, it's all his own, which is
Mm,
great. It's unique, but at the same time, it never gets to the point where you go, "Oh, that looks horrible." You know, it's always like subtle enough that it's still like a traditionalist like myself can still like look at the guitar and love the way it looks.
mm.
But then I start looking at these little subtle things that he does, and I'm just blown away. And then, of course, when you play it, it's another, it's a whole different story.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree
And he's
more.
been trying some different woods too that I've been, I'm not, I started off as a real Brazilian rosewood sort of fanatic,
Hmm.
and over the years, that's totally gone out the window. I mean, now I'm open to just anything. In fact, one of the lap slides I just got is made out of beech.
Really?
I've never had a guitar made out of beech, and the
Wow.
thing sounds awesome. Another builder, local builder, made one out of oak, and
Mm.
and that blew me away. And then when I was at Michael's place, he had one out of Cadillacs, I guess is what he
Oh,
used.
yes. Yeah, I've
And
seen that.
I fell in love with that guitar. I just couldn't quite afford it at the moment, but I would have bought that one because it was, like I said, it's very subtle but very elegant.
Mm.
But the woods sounded to me amazing, and I would think that there are a lot, we were talking about snobbery earlier. There are a lot of Brazilian rosewood snobs out there,
Oh, yeah.
but I've played, for example, since the '90s. I've had a maple guitar, and it's one of my very favorite
Yes.
guitars.
Thank you.
And I love a really good maple guitar, and I
Hmm.
love a really good mahogany guitar. And I'm I'm starting to think that I love an oak guitar and a Cadillac's guitar too. But I don't. I'm. It really comes down to how the luthier uses the wood and how they. I think if they have a really good ear, they can tell if that wood is a good enough
Mm.
sounding wood to use on a guitar. And I know that around the turn of the century they used oak for guitars, but I don't know. I never played one before that I know of, and then
Yeah. I
the
think the
Cadillacs.
Larson brothers, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. And then this new beach guitar has a Cadillac's fingerboard, so it's on the
Oh,
front. So it's a really pretty guitar.
yeah.
Here, I'll show you. It's right
Yes,
here.
please.
This is because I was playing it right before, but there's the back and the
Wow.
sides, and then there's the fingerboard. See, I mean the fretboard. Whatever I don't know what you call it. It's not a fingerboard or a fretboard. It's just a bunch of lines. But see, this guitar is just beautifully made. But
Mm.
I never would have thought you could make a guitar out of beech. And of course, it's a hollow neck all the way up.
Of
So,
course, yeah.
but
Wow.
and then I have another one kind of like that that's made out of walnut, and that sounds really
Mm.
got more of a warm quality to it. This has a more almost a maple quality to it. So, I think a lot of it though comes down to I think in the maple I really like the clarity of the sound what we were talking about
Hmm.
earlier, how clear every note comes out. But if it's built really well, I've never thought of a maple guitar as being a thin sounding guitar.
No.
And people tend to say that right off. Well, don't you can't like a maple guitar, they're too thin sounding. And I always feel like that's not my experience. So
It's people who've mostly spent time around, 1990s Taylor 614s.
yeah,
And
probably.
they're like, oh, right, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the initial attack with a maple guitar, and this is kind of a passion of mine anyway, I love
Hmm.
maple.
Oh, I do too.
Um,
Yeah.
I think if you approach maple both as a builder and as a player with the same intent that you would with a Brazilian or a mahogany guitar, then you will be disappointed. It takes adjustment. Now, there's a reason why the violin family is traditionally made out of maple.
Sure.
It's not that it sucks for instruments. You
No,
know?
what I always thought is I was a bass major in college for a while.
Really?
Composition and then bass was my instrument.
Wow.
But I always felt like maple was just fine for an instrument.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, and then I've had a couple of circuit guitars that were maple that I thought were
I know
some
you
of the.
have.
I still have one sitting out right now. You probably can't see it in the back. No, it's out of the pictures back there. But and then I have let's see what else. Oh, I have a Seifel guitar made out of maple that it's got an interesting body shape. It's one that we designed together, so it's more round on the bottom, and
Right.
it's almost more of the size of a dreadnought, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like a
Mm.
smaller guitar, and the guitar. I recorded my first 3 albums on that, or maybe my first four, and it's one of the best sounding guitars I've ever played. And we still carry that when we play. Amy plays that one too.
Right.
She has the best ear in the house, so she plays my tippin and my Seifel. And then the other guitars those are the ones I have on a maple right now. But I've recently gotten more into mahogany,
Mm.
and I have one made by. My biggest problem is my age, my memory. uh, what's this? Michael Bile made me a
Oh,
mahogany.
really?
Yeah, and it's a beautiful.
Oh,
It's
very
some mahogany
cool.
he got from PRS when he was
Mm.
working there. He bought it, and it was just beautiful piece of wood. That apparently was just not quite good enough for whatever they were using it for their electrics. But he got a
Right.
whole log of this stuff,
Hmm.
and the mahogany is really beautiful. So it's mahogany and Adirondack, and it's a triple O size.
Wow.
Beautiful guitar, and then of course I've got two Martins that are made out of mahogany, and
Mm.
it's a different sound than Brazilian or maple, but it's
Completely.
still beautiful sounding. It's like this. It's there's all these words like I know Paul has them all down, and you probably do too. It's sort of like wine, when they describe
Oh,
wine,
yes.
it's chocolatey or it's this or that. It has a nice finish. I
Hmm.
don't know, but I'm not very good at that. But to me, like I always think of the word like with mahogany more of a dry
Hmm.
sound. Rosewood I do feel like is a little darker flavor to it, and maple a little brighter.
Absolutely.
But not really. None of them are worse than the others. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I think,
It's once again we come down to personal choice.
yeah, I think they all have. I think maple is maybe preferable for a blues player because, they tend to not have as many of the overtones. You get more of a fundamental note,
Mm.
and that's probably why I like it for fingerstyle too. Is that you get the clarity of that fundamental note? It seems to be really, to my ear, really good. And
There's a sweetness to it as well, though, when you hit it
there
just
is,
right.
yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
wonderful.
especially the high strings. Again, if you don't get too big, I feel like triple O and below size or
Hmm.
grand concert, whatever you call that in the luthier world, is it grand concert size? I don't know what
That'll
triple O
do.
is,
Yeah, why not?
but that size and below are my favorites
Mm.
because of that high end, the treble. I want it to be sweeter, and to me, that's my experience is that they have a sweeter sound when they're from a smaller guitar. I have a single O Martin that I got. It's a 1931 single O 28,
Wow.
and that one is Brazilian rosewood, but it's also just a little smaller than a double O. And the sound of that guitar is so beautiful, just
Mm.
sweet, beautiful sound. And back in their original catalog in 1931, that was their concert model. That was their big
Mm.
one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Huge thing.
they made the triple O and they made the double O, but the triple O, they even say in the catalog that it's, you buy this if you want an excess of bass. They say it has too much bass right in their
That's
catalog
good to know, isn't it? It's
for a
good to be
triple O.
forewarned. You'll
And
need
so
an
that,
airbag.
right, so the ideal instrument seemed to be the double O at that point in
Mm.
time. And I have a double O that Dick Boak actually had made for me.
Oh, wow.
He knew that I liked the 1929, 1930 double O 45. So he
Who doesn't? He knew that I had impeccable taste. Yeah.
He made one. You know, I could grab it and show you.
Yes, please.
You'll like this. Well, if I can get to it, I might have put you in a bad spot there. I might not be able to.
That's okay. I'm just happy.
What if I knock you over?
Well, I've had worse.
You hear me?
Yeah, I'm still here.
It was behind my monitor, so I had to put my butt in your face. So this one, you know, he put this inlay in it for me, which is from the 1902, but he put this old style tuners on it, and he did this just amazing rosewood.
Oh, that's upsetting, isn't it? Look at that.
Yeah, and you know, so it's got some 45 style trim, but it doesn't have it on the back and side. So it's basically a 42/45, but the inlay pattern and all that is, and this is a 00, and it's become one of my favorite guitars. Just the size of this guitar, and for the same reason, this, you know, the sound of these. Well, whatever.
You'll still be hearing that one. Next on my list of word associations, Al.
Oh,
yeah. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let me put this somewhere where I want.
Put it somewhere safe. There we go.
I'll put it back here so you can see it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more names. And yeah, here we go. I'm going to hit you in hard with them. Jim Olsen.
Jim Olsen. He's one of those people that I would say was almost responsible for me getting into buying high-end guitars. And it's a funny story. Jim was I'll shorten it. It's
That's okay. No need.
I'm good friends with a guy named David Wilcox, who's a singer-songwriter, and he's one of Olsen's big, you know, people. He's been with him for years, and
yes,
and I guess I was playing a Takamine guitar or something. This is so many years ago. And David Wilcox had like 2 extra Olsens that he wasn't playing.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean,
yeah, so he says,
take
these, and you and Amy need to be playing good guitars. So he lent his guitars to us. I mean, Brazilian Rosewood Olsens, right? 2 of them.
Right. Generous. Good friends to have.
We're playing, and I said, well, you know, I have to have a pickup in it and stuff. He says, that's okay, go ahead and drill into it, put a pickup. He's like, so I did. I when I look back at that now, I think, what an idiot. Because I had no idea what I was doing, you know, but I did it slowly. But anyway, so I put a pickup in it. And I fell in love with that guitar, and so did Amy. We just fell in love with the idea that we went from, even our audience said, all of a sudden I can hear what you and Amy are doing on stage. Before it was blending together too much. Now it's like I can hear the clarity of every note. We were like, we need to get some Olsens, you know? And so I called Jim, and he was at that point, I don't even know if he remembers this, but at that point he was having some physical issues, some medical problems or something. And he had quit taking orders for the time being. And this was a long time ago. I mean, 90s, maybe late 90s.
Right.
97, 98, I don't know. But he hadn't been, for some reason he wasn't taking orders. So I told David that, the other reason I ordered this, was going to order a guitar, is David said, okay, well, if you really like that guitar, just order one from Jim, and then when yours comes in, you can take your pick between whichever one you like better. And I thought, well, that's an incredible deal, because I'm one of these people that doesn't want to order, I don't want to buy a guitar I haven't played, you know. But so that's when I called Jim, and then he couldn't do it. So he recommended Kevin Ryan. And so I ended up calling Kevin Ryan, and he sent me out a guitar to play. And I had never heard of Kevin Ryan, and, you know, on the East Coast, we didn't know any of those West Coast people anyway, you know. But same thing happened. I fell in love with that guitar, and Amy did too. And so we got on the phone with him, and, you know, he it's like, here's the great news. We really like your guitar, but we want 2 of them. But he gave us like the blue light special 2-for-1 price. So it and back then I think it was like $4,000 or something. You know, it was ridiculous.
It's tough to say no, isn't it?
Oh man, and that's a whole other long story there. I played Ryan's for years, but I would have been playing Olsen's, and but then when I was in Phoenix a couple of years ago, Jim came out. He has a house there. He came out to see the concert, and it was great seeing him again. And we hadn't seen him in so many years. He said hi to Amy, and we didn't know who he was, and she was like, it's one of those things where you go, I'm sorry, I don't recognize you.
I know you.
I know, yeah. But he had, we'd all had aged, and he was thinner and different, just we hadn't seen each other in years, But anyway, that was so Jim Olsen to me is one of the gentlest, kindest people I've ever met, and he was just really instrumental in getting me started in
Absolutely
guitars. I think I want to kill him actually now.
it's all his fault. Right, let's move on to, here's a name for you, Irvin Tamaki. We've mentioned him once already.
Irvin is, in my book, is one of the funniest men on earth. In fact, the first time I ever called him on the phone, I hadn't even introduced myself, and he just said, "Tell me a joke." He was gathering jokes, I guess. And then we spent some time together at Healdsburg, and went out to dinner a few times and just hung out, and got stuck in the airport in Albany during the hurricane. And so Irvin and I have some times together, and I've just really always liked Irvin a lot. He's one of my favorite guys to sort of go to dinner with because he's so funny. But also he's always been bringing in these young luthier apprentices that turn out to be really wonderful.
Yeah,
he's spawned so many amazing guitar builders over his years, and he's always trying something new. I remember it might have been Memphis actually. It might have been Healdsburg, but he had a guitar that he wasn't showing anybody, and he only showed it to me and Alex DeGrassi.
Right.
And it wasn't finished or anything. He just wanted our opinion, which is kind of cool. It's like he's trying some new bracing. He wanted to see how we felt about it. And in my book, it was one of the best sounding ones I had heard so far that he had of anybody's, but of his, because it was that smaller body, a little more focused mid-range. Right. And, the whole guitar felt, to my ear, more like a classical, even though it was a steel string. It even sounded like a classical, had less of a brightness to it. It was more mellow, but it was just really special. And I don't even know whatever happened to that guitar, if he ended up building more like that or not, but I was really impressed. But I was also impressed that he's willing to go out to players and say, "What do you think of this?" and tell me what you think. Absolutely.
I think the trap that some builders might fall into is to think, I make what I make, accept it or don't, and then there isn't necessarily a dialogue.
There's probably got to be a certain amount of that too, because you got to end up. I think they have to come up with something that is uniquely. This is what Michael and Bastion and I were talking about. It has to be uniquely theirs. And if they're all over the map and they never quite settled into a sound or a style, then people don't know what to expect from them.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a balance,
Absolutely.
I mean, Irvin does things he goes out on a limb sometimes, with his decoration and stuff, and he just always is trying things. Yes, I like one in particular. I saw a picture of it. The inlay was going around the rosette, and then it just falls off and breaks.
That's beautiful.
I thought that was the coolest looking thing I've
seen. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he loves that humorous element, and sort of completely takes you by surprise. It's wonderful. I've got two more names. Instagram only gives us an hour together, I'm afraid, Al. Yeah. But we will do what we've got with Linda Manzer.
Linda Manzer, I feel like I've never seen her not smiling. I feel like she's, and she's one of those people that I would say her sound is really her sound. And it's got less bass than I think other builders, but it's got that focus that that I was talking about. So I'm not. She also has that, at least that wedge shape. I think she came up with that. I don't know. Someone, I think she's the first one I saw that did a wedge shaped guitar, which to me made perfect sense.
Oh yeah, completely.
But anyway, first time I met her, I felt like I'd known her my whole life, like she was a friend of mine or even a family member or something. She's just such a wonderful person, and I love her. So yeah.
Beautiful. And finally, Michael Greenfield.
Michael Greenfield. Now, I've only met him once, but I've played a lot of his guitars.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, and his guitars. I have a friend who's also sort of a patron of sorts. He's bought a lot of my guitars for more than I paid for. But he's an amazing guitar player himself. But he goes through a lot of guitars. He goes through phases of builders. Right now he's in a Greenfield phase, and the guitars he's getting are all like the top stuff that Michael makes, and those guitars sound totally amazing. And it's it's got a voice that's, again, just really balanced. I can't, and I like the trebles. I think they're nice. But the thing I like about Michael the best, again, is just him. I like him. And his wife. I thought his wife I met him and his wife at the same time, and they're just such a great couple. And he's done a lot to promote musicians as well as the other way around, But I mean, he does those little concerts in his actual shop. I thought those are really cool.
Yeah.
But he's one of the, I'm, like I said before, I'm more of a traditional Martin fan. So I'm not as much into the heel styles that Samaji and Greenfield and Bastion. A lot of these people use that kind of flat heel. Yeah. And then up at the peg head, you can't slide your capo back over it.
Over the volute. You're not supposed to.
Well, no, see, this is my Martin here. See, I use this kind. Whoops.
Is that an Elliott?
No, this is actually a G7, but it's
right, the new one.
But see, you can do this like that and leave it there, and it keeps the strings from vibrating back there.
That's the behavior of a hooligan, and you know it.
But I've always liked that kind of capo, and especially this new G7. It's like it adapts to it's got an adaptive radius thing, and any guitar you put it on.
I haven't played one yet.
And the fact that it is a stainless steel capo, like the Elliott, and it's this one's engraved. That's my wife's, but you can get engraving on it. So my name is my signature is engraved on mine.
Oh well, look at you! How cool is that? Listen, we've come to the end of our hour. I don't have a clock, obviously. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for your time. As I said in the introduction, I don't know if you heard, but you've been a guitar hero of mine for many years, and it's been such a joy to talk to you.
Well, yeah, likewise for you. And I can't get used to you having short hair, but I'll get used to it.
Everyone's just going to have to. You take care of yourself. Stay in touch, my friend. All the best. And thanks everyone else for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.